Welcome to the Masculine Wilderness Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Perez. Professionally, I am the CEO and founder of the EPIC Project, a nonprofit organization that aims to engage men in the fight against sex trafficking. But personally, I'm the father of 3 adult daughters and the grandfather to 3 grandkids. And that's why this episode is so especially important to me. Not only is our guest the father of 4 children himself, but he also has a very unique perspective on the online threats that kids face every day and how to reduce those threats. Parents and adults in general are rightly concerned with the digital world that poses so many real risks for kids. This ecosystem shares the same exploitive DNA that's heavily influenced masculine culture in general. It reduces vulnerable people, in this case, kids, into products that can be used and discarded. This is a sobering but necessary conversation. Kevin Branzetti is the co-founder and CEO of the National Child Protection Task Force. With a 29-year career in law enforcement, Branzetti spent 22 years specializing in terrorism and violent extremism with the New York Police Department, later joining the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for another 7. At the Manhattan DA's office, he led major investigations into these areas, including terrorism, violent extremism, and cybercrime. He ended his NYPD journey in the Intelligence Bureau as the commanding officer of the Cyber Intelligence Unit, where he pioneered the development of a groundbreaking terrorist targeting program. Globally well-respected, he shared his online investigative know-how with police worldwide and worked closely with major social media companies to create trauma-informed solutions. He's now at the head of the National Child Protection Task Force. Kevin Branzetti's unparalleled leadership and deep-rooted expertise anchor the organization's mission to protect children. Drawing from his vast experience in law enforcement, intelligence, and cyber investigations, Kevin provides a robust foundation to tackle the intricate challenges of crimes against children. Under his stewardship, the task force has emerged as a formidable player against child exploitation, harnessing cutting-edge strategies and synergies to effect real change. And so in today's episode, we'll not only talk about Kevin's experience in nearly 30 years in law enforcement, but also his recommendations for online safety, his insights into our nation's runaway situation, his thoughts on masculinity, and his number 1 tip to keeping children safe. While Kevin and I do not discuss any graphic details of his work throughout the episode, please remember that this is a conversation that touches on sexual violence. And while it's never our goal to sensationalize the trauma of this topic, we strive to speak truthfully about the damage being done. So thanks for joining us today as we explore more of the masculine wilderness.
Today's episode is brought to you by ATP Restoration. ATP Restoration is Kansas City's local, family-owned property restoration firm with locations serving the Kansas City metro area and Lake of the Ozarks. ATP prides itself on putting the customer first with its full-service, turnkey approach to property damage. Whether you're facing mold issues, experiencing a fire, or have 6 inches of water in your basement, you can trust that calling ATP is the right choice to get the job done. Thank you, ATP, for making this episode possible.
Kevin Branzetti, National Child Protection Task Force and pizza aficionado from New York City. Talking to Tom Perez from Chicago. We have some internal conflict already, but we're going to set that aside for just a little bit. I'm really glad you agreed to take the time with us this morning, and we want to talk about kind of where a whole bunch of different things, but it seems like our work overlaps in multiple places, and we really have the same outcomes that we're aiming towards. But I wanted to just give you a few minutes to share a little bit of your story, because it's so unlike mine. It's so unlike mine. But if you could give us a little bit of your background professionally, like how did you get to where we are today having this conversation?
That is a story.
It is.
And while our backgrounds might be different, I think the fact that we're here And neither one of us, if we would have talked 5 years or 10 years ago, would have said we'd be here doing
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the similarity.
Yeah.
Where it's an awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Once you are awoken to what is going on,
Yeah.
there's no turning.
Right. Right.
And that's kind of my story and the story of everybody on the National Child Protection Task Force. But my background, I have 29 years in law enforcement between the NYPD and the Manhattan DA's office. For the last 20 years of that, I was working violent extremist cases, terrorism, plain and simple.
Yeah.
So I was doing terrorism cases. You Google my name, you'll find things, right, that exist. I was out there. I ran NYPD cyber intelligence unit. So terrorism, but also the online aspect of how do you find people, track people, find more data on them, find their really, really bad accounts. Everybody's public account is easy. It's the ones they don't want you to know are the hard ones. So that's the short background.
So this started post 9/11, just after 9/11, right? Okay.
Yeah. My 2003 is when I got into the world of terrorism.
Wow.
And I lived, ate, slept, drank it. It's all I read. It's all I trained on. I trained trained around the world. I trained with people from all over the world. I mean, I was immersed. It was a part of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then 5.5 years ago, an April afternoon in Norwood, Massachusetts, I was at the National Cybercrime Conference, and I sat in a class on a missing kid investigation that changed my world. So to give you a quick story of this one, it was a 14-year-old autistic girl who had met a creepy guy online and disappeared. So it was considered an online abduction. Mm-hmm. So not the white van, come and help me, I need to find my puppy.
Right.
Modern day abduction, which happens through our computers. So she's gone. And she is gone for somewhere around a week and a half at this point. Local police, state police, FBI are all working on this. They can't find her. The gentleman, Kevin, who helped start the organization, had written multiple books on cellular tracking. So he kept asking them, can I see your data? And, they gave him the data. And when he looked at it, he was able to decipher through it and go, when they took her, they went to this hotel in Arkansas, from there to the airport, from that airport to Seattle airport. From there, they're now at this house. And the guy's name who has her is this. And he was completely right.
Wow.
And this blew my mind of how can local, state, federal authorities not understand the data they're reading? And the answer became simple. Tech changes too fast.
Right.
And I don't care what agency you're from. We can't keep up with it. There is no national training center for all law enforcement when it comes to technology. So when a new thing comes out, we can all just look at hey, look, there's a new way Google's doing something, or new way Verizon is looking at cell phones. We've learned investigative skills and information passed on from generation to generation. With technology, that doesn't work.
Doesn't do it that way.
No. So him and I sat down and had a cheeseburger that day. Said, how do we do this better? And we went with, we started to find and bring in friends we already had. I had a really lucky career where I met lots of people. So we were able to bring lots of people into the fold. And the next call that came in, we had 15 people in the room waiting. So next child abduction case comes in, we have 15 experts online immediately. Boom. And we helped kids found within hours. Next call, more calls. And it just became word of mouth. One case turned into a dozen cases, turned into 100. To this point, we're doing a couple of thousand a year. That's the level we're at. So that's kind of how it started. That's the beginning of how I got here. There's a lot more along the path, but that's the short story. It was one training class, one day by chance. I picked that class to sit in. Yeah. Out of 250 classes, I picked one. I only sat in 2 classes that week because I was training. Yeah. The odds was tiny, but it was life-changing.
Now, you also
in your career in law enforcement from NYPD to the DA's office, somewhere in that window too. What was the difference? Like, what was the difference in the work you were doing at that level?
Not much.
Okay.
So when I left NYPD, I left NYPD in 2015, and I got an offer to go to the Manhattan DA's office and become their deputy chief of intelligence. So I would be their rep doing the terrorism cases with NYPD.
Got it.
It was also, can we be more proactive, learn better technology in all investigations? So it gave me an opportunity to go out and meet even more people and learn more things and find out more stuff. But the investigations, I was pretty much involved in the same exact stuff.
Okay.
And the other difference, for the first time in my life, I was off weekends.
That's kind of nice. Yeah.
Wow. My whole career was spent, I had to work you work every weekend. You get a part of weekends, but I never got weekends.
The whole weekend off. Wow.
Yeah.
When we talked earlier, you'd mentioned, as NYPD and even Manhattan DA's office, like that's, from my perspective, not law enforcement. Like, the NYPD is like, it's the flagship of agencies, relatively speaking. I mean, there's a lot of big agencies around the country, but NYPD is at or near the top in terms of the scale of the work they do and the resources and all of that. I'm thinking of some of the cities where our EPIC teams are active and, trying to support law enforcement: Fort Worth, Portland, Fresno, places like that just, that is not NYPD. They don't have the resources. What's different in those places for cops that are trying to do the work that you were doing for so long? Like, what are their limitations? What do you think their frustrations are?
Well, the honest answer is it's not much different. NYPD's bigger. Bigger isn't always better.
Okay.
I have found some of the most brilliant investigators in small departments.
Well, okay.
And I found brilliant ones in big departments. We all have the same kind of frustration. We all kind of have the same things that go on in our careers.
Yeah.
I said earlier, like, we're not trained in technology. There's no standard in investigator training for police departments anywhere. It was always generational, because if you think back just 20 years, it's all we got to go back is 20 years.
Right.
The main thing, how you solved cases, were people. So you had to be a good people person. I had to convince a victim to tell me what happened and press charges, right? And want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I had to convince a witness to be a witness. And eventually I had to convince a suspect to tell me why he or she did it, and how they did it, right? It was all done through personalities.
Yeah.
Now it's done through technology, and we're not equipped to it. But we don't have a system made to teach law enforcement to use technology in their investigations.
With the speed at which technology evolves, how could you create it?
You can't. Well, you can, but it takes a lot of effort, time, money. We got to change the whole system. Right now in the US, there are over 18,000 police departments. Nobody actually knows the number. There's no central database in the federal government of every cop and every police department in the country. So it's an estimate.
Wow.
And each department has its own training program. So it is way behind. Where at NYPD, there are things they're doing unbelievably good. There are things LAPD does where their tech is usually better than NYPD.
Yeah.
But I still tell you, I'll find a detective in Springdale, Arkansas, who I would, if it was my child, that'd be the first person I'm calling over any of those two big departments.
Wow. So it still is, in some ways, it still comes down to the quality of the people you have, even in the face of this rapid technology shift. So you've made that transition from the carrying the badge now to supporting the guys that carry the badge. Tell me more, if you could break down a little bit more about what the task force does. What's the scope of that work now?
So our main function is we're a rapid response for law enforcement.
Okay.
A quick example is a police officer, an investigator from somewhere. It could be an FBI agent, it could be HSI, it could be a cop. Doesn't matter. Calls us up and says, hey, we have this case. 15-year-old girl met some creepy guy online. She disappeared. We got a couple of, maybe we have a username for him. Maybe we have a couple of things, but we've sent legal process to a bunch of companies and we've gotten nowhere. You have any thoughts? And that's where our strength comes in, where we bring in the people, because we are active and retired law enforcement. We are active and retired military, private sector, civilians. Our main thing we look for, once we hear a problem, we look for people who can solve that problem.
Right.
So look for technologists and others so that we know, all right, when we run into this wall again, we have these 8 people we can call. And so we immediately call those. So the cop working the case doesn't have to learn it on the fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants their child to be found while a cop who's investigating it is learning it. It's not how this should be done.
Yeah. So the people that you call kind of press into service, are they staff? Are they just trained volunteers? Is it a mix of both?
Mix of both. So we have 8 people on staff.
Okay.
But it's our volunteer network that's really what's golden.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. We've done so many warrants and so many different requests to all of your social media companies, whether it's Meta or Snap or somebody else, or it's your cellular companies, or if it's your Google or Apple, that we understand the language they speak, so we know how to ask it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know who to call when we have one of these dire emergencies.
Yeah.
And cops finding who to call is almost impossible. These companies deal with you through a portal.
Yeah.
You log in.
Chatbots. Yeah.
It's not even a chatbot. Like, you log in, you leave what you're looking for, and you wait. And you sit and you wait until it could be an hour. If you put in an emergency, it could be weeks.
Yeah.
Before you get an answer. And because you're not communicating verbally, you could ask for it wrong. Like, the tech just changed.
Right.
So I'm asking for A, and now the item's called B. So I'm going to get back negative and not know I called it the wrong name. This happens every day.
So you have this cadre of really uniquely skilled people that you call on when these cases come up. What is, I'm thinking more of the volunteers, but it could be staff as well. Like, what's their motivation? What really drives them?
Children. It's I gotta tell you, it's a little bit of an addiction, right? When you save one child, right? Because we're in the case from beginning to end. We had a case a couple of weeks ago. Sunday morning, 1:30 a.m., the child disappears. Parents wake up. Your 14-year-old is gone. Right? I got 4 kids. Like, I get sick to my stomach just mentally trying to be in those shoes. When mom and dad wake up, your 14-year-old's gone. Devices are left behind, which is always a tough sign of they don't want to be tracked, right? They know, and they were told to leave them. So they go through the devices and they find a couple of usernames. Local cops are doing great work. 9 p.m.-ish, we get a call. So it's later that day. This is what we got. They gave us the data. It just happened we had the right people in our network. By 11:30, we identified the guy. We identified the house, the state, everything he was in. He was 1,000 miles away from their home.
Wow.
They had already driven her 1,000 miles away from their home. Gave it to the cops. The cops called the local cops there. They went to that guy's house. He's there. She's there. Recovered same day.
Wow.
That's what we do. That's our goal. Like, we're a support for that cop. We're just going to help bring the resource to them, they still got to do their investigation.
Yeah.
We're not taking anybody's investigation. We can't. We don't have the ability. Their ability still needs to be done. We're just giving them the right resource. We just keep.
Yeah.
Here, check this.
What does it take to build that kind of trust with law enforcement agencies? I know just from like the work that we've done, it's you're not automatically, even if you're a cop, but especially like in our case as civilians, trust has to be earned. How have you become so trustworthy?
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, right? Like there's a decent amount of people I knew. Right. I've been in law enforcement a long time. So they know you, or they know somebody who knows you. Always helps.
Mm-hmm.
This is still, word of mouth is still the best friend you can have.
Yeah.
We do lots of training. So we are at lots of events. We do lots of webinars. And so we're doing webinars. We're at conferences. We get ourselves out there. So they will trust us.
Yeah.
And part of that also has to be, we have to be smart with how we do it. Right, like I'm being entrusted with personal data of people.
Right,
it's got to be protected. It's got to be returned. Right, like, and I can't go running to the news and say, "Look at me, we did that."
Well, that's the other thing that has impressed me as I've learned about the work you're doing. There's a lot, I've seen it over the years. A lot of people make a lot of what sound like really dubious claims about all the. Just the sheer volume of kids that they've rescued, and when you start to probe a little bit, it's like, yeah, those claims sound a little bit, suspicious. But you guys don't seem to spend a whole lot of time promoting that. Like like it just feels like you're just really just there doing the work. You're not there to take credit for it and that sort of a thing. Like where does that come from? It feels like it's so unusual because it's got to be a huge rush to see an abducted kid return to their home.
It's a massive rush.
Yeah.
Earlier question. That's how we get people to stay and keep working.
Mm.
All right. Once you've been a part of that one case and you chipped in, because we share everything with the people who are working with us.
Yeah.
Right? Let them know. Most importantly, we always let them know the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is that massive rush at the end, but it's part of our, like I'd say, in our DNA, part of our charter. We do not go public. I will pretty much guarantee you, if we did that, we'd be out of business after a bit of time.
Because why is that? Why would that be?
Problems wouldn't call us. If the point of me doing this is for self-promotion, I know I was a detective, I wouldn't call me. I'm not calling those guys. They're in it for themselves.
Yeah.
We're not in this for ourselves. We are in this, and we bring people in. They got to understand you're in this for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And if you can't get enough satisfaction after working that case, I'm worried about who you are as a human to begin with.
That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, no, we've talked, we've had similar conversations with like our volunteers over the years. And my standard speech is I tell the guys, I was an offensive lineman in high school and college, and it's the most unglamorous role in football. And the unique thing about it is if we do our jobs, no one ever knows our name. Right? Yep. And it's just kind of the same thing, right? And so we pride ourselves. We used to call ourselves the anonymous fat guys, just the big guys that just there. And when we fail to do our job, then everybody knows our name. So it's like there is some. It's a weird place to be, but that anonymity is its own reward, I think, in some ways. So that's really cool to hear that some of that exists, I think, with you guys as well. I want to go back to the technology and the speed of its evolution. In the time you've been let's just say with the task force, like what have been some of the biggest shifts in technology that have created some of the biggest challenges for you guys in the work you're doing?
It's everything.
Yeah.
There's no one piece. Your Facebook account today doesn't look like it did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a shift in technology. And that shift in technology means I have to ask Facebook if they're the ones who are going to help me. If they're, say, the girl who got abducted met the guy on Facebook, I then have to understand the new way Facebook account works, looks, and sounds, so I can ask Facebook properly for the right data. So it's everything.
Yeah.
Our cell phones have changed. Our cellular companies, nothing stands still.
How do you keep track of all that?
Lots of people. It's just we're in this era of crowdsourcing investigations. And I will never understand the intricacies of cellular technology. I don't need to. I just need to know it exists.
Yeah.
And then I need to know, who do I call?
Yeah.
And, and it's not never one person. You want a team of people, because the guy I have today at AT&T could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or not working today, or sick. Like, so it's a bigger, you need a big pool of people who can help with everything.
Yeah. It's interesting though. You said earlier that, in the old, back in the day, investigations were you really people to people, but there's still a little bit of that ethic in what you do. You still have to have good relational skills, right?
100%. All detective skills will never go away.
Yeah.
We will never replace them. We've learned to, and you said it right, never thought of it that way, that yes, we've now pivoted that people to people skill to technologists.
Yeah. 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 I have a friend who refers to herself as a people technologist. She's highly skilled in leveraging technology, but she's even better at just with her people skills. And that's what makes her so good at what she does. Talk to me a little bit about Runaways versus, the I don't know if there's a typical, but Runaways versus real like trafficking victims. There's sometimes there's a distinction between those, sometimes not. Like, how do you guys navigate that?
Well, one, you don't investigate the why until you find them.
Got it.
Find first, investigate after. Some people, some agencies take the approach of let's learn the why. And if we realize she's being trafficked or she was taken, we're going to put all the resources. If we think the kid just ran away, and I hate the term, then we don't put as much resources into it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. I don't like that term, runaway. It has a connotation with it. We kind of think of it softly. But the truth is, our sex trafficking victims, the number one pool they come from is runaways.
Yeah.
By a long shot. It's not even close. Right?
Yeah.
Like, our kids in this country are not kidnapped and then put into a brothel to work. It doesn't happen.
Right.
It is so incredibly rare. I don't want to say doesn't. It's beyond incredibly rare.
Yeah.
The amount of kids who run away and become trafficked, that's a real number.
Right. Right.
Like, that's a real problem. So the symptom shows itself in the runaway.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we in society don't take advantage of seeing the symptom.
Do you think the label itself, runaway, is even all that useful, or is there a better word to describe that?
You're just missing.
Mm.
If I tell you Sally's missing, and if I tell you Sally ran away, you think of it differently.
Yeah.
You
can blame a runaway for running away.
Yeah. And if you think of just like, we're not too far off in age. If you think of shows going back, how they portrayed Runaways, right? We can go back to even like Leave It to Beaver kind of shows where they have a little thing on their thing, a pole, and they run away. We don't.
How old do you think I am?
Reruns, my friend,
Yeah,
reruns.
yeah.
When we grew up, everything was reruns. We
Yeah,
didn't have
true.
300 channels. We
Yeah.
had 7.
Yeah.
So that's all I
Yeah.
got. But say, Runaways on TV are not portrayed as a like, oh my God, there's a real potential danger.
Right.
Or what can happen? A runaway is at a massive risk of becoming trafficked, assaulted, addicted, murdered, part of the system, a criminal. Like the whole spectrum is there.
Yeah.
And the symptom sits there, and we all look at the symptom and kind of go, just a runaway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always sounded to me the way in just in the wider culture, we use the term runaway. It sounds hauntingly like throwaway. They're just a runaway.
I've heard that term used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like the distinction there. These are missing kids. Someone is missing them. We talked about this a little bit the last time we talked. I want to frame this and turn the conversation a little bit, but like I see the work that you're doing, the background that you come from, and you've gotten to do the things in response to missing kids and trafficked youth and all of that. You got to do the things that I, as a guy, like, man, I wish I could do. You're the real life Liam Neeson kind of character from the movie Taken. I'm just saying in my little brain, So, and I know from talking to so many guys over the years, like what you do and the work that you do with cops, like that's what I wish I could do in response to these vulnerable kids being abducted and suffering all kinds of violence. But I can't do what you do. I don't have the skills and the background to do what you do. What do you say to men who have never carried the badge and the gun? What is there for them to do as dads, as husbands, as friends, as brothers, as, people in the marketplace? What do you say to guys like us in this work that is ours to do? I can't do an investigation into a missing kid. I'm never going to get a call from a cop, to participate in that. So, like as a cop speaking to civilian men, kind of man to man, what do you say to us?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. So, one, be part of the change. Where we talked about the term runaway, and we kind of care. If we went to I don't know what town you live in. If we went to any town USA, doesn't matter, and you went to that police department and asked the head of the police department how many burglaries they had this month, how many robberies, how many car thefts, they'll tell you. How many missing kids have you had? And they're going to kind of go, I don't know. We don't know. We don't pay attention to it. So more than anything is bringing light to what the problem is. On top of that, we find that missing kid. So we found that girl I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
She's brought home. Who's responsible for her to find out the why? So child services, their job is for allegations of abuse in the home. So it's not their job. Law enforcement, our job is to bring you home, not our job. Whose job is to find out the why?
Why?
More often than not, she's going to leave again. And each time she leaves, the odds of those bad things happening goes up even further.
Yeah.
And nobody's responsible for that. Nobody's putting together the team who's responsible for that. And what does it take? You just can't walk into the young lady's house and say, how come you left last week? It takes sessions to the point where she trusts you.
Yeah.
Now, maybe the reasons all come from different things. They could be, it's always mental health in the end, right? It's always a mental health. And what caused the mental health? Is it just teenage years suck? I hated mine, right? They're not fun.
Yeah.
Is it just that? Is it something bad in the home, right? Did we just put the kid in danger?
Yeah.
Is it somebody in their circle that's hurting them that we don't know? Like, we're not finding the why.
Yeah.
So how do we organize that? I don't know who can start doing that, and you could start doing that in your community, whatever your community is.
Yeah.
Let's put things together so we can learn the why.
Why?
And the second runaway doesn't happen. If you look at stats, if you can get the stats of where you live, the state of runaways, and you'll see the frequent flyers, how many times they run away.
Yeah.
And then what eventually happens to that kid's life is awful.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I think this is really insightful, is there's not enough effort being exerted to answer the why.
No, it is. The analogy I like to use is skin cancer, right? You get a growth on your shoulder, you see it, you're told it's bad, and you do nothing.
Yeah.
And then years later, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're not seeing the damage it's causing internally as it spreads. And then you go to the doctor and you say, help. And the doctor's like, you're in stage 4. Like, there's not much help I can give you. But if when that spot was here, you got it removed, it's gone and done forever.
Yeah.
That first time that kid runs away is that spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we ignore it. And we let her run away again.
Yeah.
And then she's a pest.
Right.
Right. Law enforcement perspective, like think of the cop. I put the resources in. I found her 6 months ago. She ran away again a month later. Put the resources in, found her again. She runs away again. I got 30 other cases on my desk. She runs away again. Where does that case go?
Yeah.
Bottom of the pile. And then she turns up raped, assaulted, beaten, murdered, trafficked. And we all go, I wish we would have done something.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we label them a child prostitute or something like that.
Well, they're just a throwaway kid at that point. They're garbage. That first time she ran away, she screamed for help. We all did nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, in all your years of doing this work, is there a case or two that just really haunts you when you think about it?
There are a couple.
Yeah.
There are a couple out there.
Can you share? You don't have to, none of the graphic details, but how does it actually? What I'm more curious about is just like, how does it impact you and just your mental health when you go home at the end of the day, when you're with your kids? Like how does it hit you?
Well, it definitely hits you, right? And the mental health of the team hits us. We have another nonprofit that helps us with our mental health. We have a whole team, a strategy. I see a therapist every 2 weeks for 2 hours.
Wow.
Help with this.
Yeah.
Like there's no way of doing this without. I posted on my LinkedIn account this morning about the most important thing for a leader is to take care of your people. Period. The mental health of your people is beyond important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is definitely a strain.
Yeah.
There is, some pains, but you got to talk about it and you got to find people to talk to.
Yeah. I agree. I have said similar things for a long time. I do my best to practice those, and yet it's weird. It still sounds strange for two guys to be saying these things. Like men don't. We're so reluctant to go there. I really appreciate you raising that, and yeah, that's. It's still hard. Like, it's still hard for me to go. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
100%.
Yep.
I remember as a young cop, like you weren't allowed to show emotions.
Yeah.
Empathy wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
It was frowned upon. And I think
you could be pissed though, right? You could be pissed.
Oh yeah. Oh, you were allowed. Everybody was angry.
Yeah. That's okay.
Anger was allowed, but empathy was not.
So that kind of leads me to my next question thing I want to get into. Like, there's a masculine culture that drives this thing that we're talking about right here, like just our reluctance to admit that we feel things, that we that there's pain and there's suffering and all of that. And that masculine culture feeds the demand. This is where it really intersects with the work that we're doing directly. It directly fuels the demand that drives sex trafficking, that creates the market into which a lot of the kids you just talked about often end up in commercial sex. What, like, over the years, whether as a cop or just in the work you're doing with the task force, what have you experienced about that masculine culture that's like especially frustrating? Like, just is there anything just parts of, what's frustrating about the masculine culture that you encounter in your work and in our culture and at large?
Well, it's not as frustrating today as it was, I would say, 10 years ago and then 20 years ago. We're getting better, but we're still, what you just talked about, we're still at that point of you're not allowed to say, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
Mentally. Like, something's wrong. Like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling is a tough phrase.
Yeah.
Right? To go to your friends and say, hey, Bob, I'm struggling. Like, I need some sort of help.
Yeah.
So the two part of that's really difficult. And I had a massive hard time with this myself, is admitting you're struggling, and then two, asking for help. And I've learned these last couple of years about those who help people, right? We're in the world of helping.
Mm-hmm.
We hate more than anything to ask for help.
Yeah.
And it actually makes us a hypocrite.
Mm.
That I'm doing these things and I'm going to help the, people who are in distress, and I have to get them to accept me helping them. Yeah. But when it's my turn, I don't want help. Well, that's the nerve of me.
Yeah.
All right. Like, that's a hypocrite. Like, it's.
How do you break through that? I am totally there. That is my Achilles heel. Always has been. How do you break through that?
You have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're having the conversation.
Yeah.
I have this conversation with anybody who wants to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. My breakthrough for myself was my divorce. I hit a point where I couldn't function.
Wow.
And I had to ask for help. Yeah. It was super humbling of calling my mother and saying, can you come over? I can't deal with my kids today.
Wow.
And I've never, ever, you taught, suck it up.
Right. Yep.
Pull up your bootstraps. There's a great commercial, a mental health commercial, that gives all those phrases. I wish I could think of them right now. But that's it. That's what you were taught. You were taught to put up the flag and say, help me.
Right.
And I had to call her. It wasn't possible. My kids were I have four. Two of the young ones were young.
Mm.
And I just couldn't get through the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I learned the hard way.
Yeah, I think we all do. I'm tired of keep learning, like I keep learning the hard way. Like, it's got to be an easier way. But I know this is not unique to guys like us. I think it's hard all the way around. It's interesting too when I think about it, the interactions we have had with sex buyers over the years, lots of them, it's the same pattern. Like, the guys that, obviously we don't have long conversations with all of the guys that, that our volunteers interact with, but over the years, they've had a lot of really strangely deep conversations with sex buyers right at the moment they're trying to buy someone, and the same issues. They're struggling. They're lonely. They're disconnected. they don't have anyone to talk to, and the culture, that we've both grown up in says, well, intimacy is sex, and if you can't get it for free, you can get it for a price, and that's how you feel connected, and so that's the mindset that these guys are in that moment, and I just think it's ironic that there's the sex buyers that are driving sexual exploitation often, not exclusively, but often they're kind of in the same space that we are. It's like we're disconnected, we're isolated, we don't have a sense of belonging and connection and all of that. So, I'm looking at my list of questions, and this one just keeps popping up. Like, in light of all that, like, what is hopeful? Like, what do you see in your work? That, like, where do you find hope?
This is a problem set that can be fixed. That's the thing here. We can fix it. I worked narcotics for years. I have no solution for the narcotics trade. This is fixable.
Yeah.
Right. Our kids who are falling into this trap, it's something we can solve. I said it earlier. The one thing that's the symptom is they are the runaway. So if we took the time and paid attention to that kid the first time they ran away and got them help and spent time with them and got them, whether it's therapy or a new home or a new whatever it is.
Right.
But we listened, we learned, and we acted on what's going on in their lives. That's fixable.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sex trade you talked about, you're hearing a lot of it is guys who are depressed and lonely and things, and it's an outlet. Well, understanding that makes it a fixable thing. We can do it. So this is fixable. But on top of it, what really also gives me hope in this world with this, more than anything else I've done in my career, I keep meeting good human beings who are trying to do great things.
Yeah.
Whether it's you, people in my organization, the amount of former trafficked women I've met who tell their story and go out and help. Nobody humbles me more than them. Like that. Like, I thought I had strength. I beat them and I'm weak. Like, that's a completely
whole
different
other level.
It's a different level that, thank God, I will never know.
Yeah.
But meeting all of the good people who are out here trying, and when it comes to sex trafficking and runaways and missings, and all, there are lots of orgs. There are lots of people donating their time, their money, their energy to try to change it.
Yeah.
That's what gives me hope.
That's good to hear.
The amount of people doing good is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good to hear. You said something when we first talked. I didn't want to forget this because it was so insightful. So that the National Child Protection Task Force is focused, on identifying, locating missing kids, but it's also, there's a protective side of it. It covers things like internet safety and all of that. Do you remember you talked about how to keep your kids safe? Can you riff on that a little bit? Because it was so good.
Well, the best tip I can give any parent: have dinner with your kids every night. Right? Parenting has not changed. Technology is just a new toy. It really hasn't changed. The advent of a car, I'm sure, made parents go crazy. Oh my God, my kids could go further away from my home. There's been things that have come along and gone over the years. Being a parent hasn't changed. Communicate with your kids. And if your kids trust you, that's number one, right? It is beyond the most important thing. Because my kids might not tell me, maybe they don't get into danger, but my kids also have, and that's happened over the years. They've told me about their friends when they're in danger, that they trust me enough to say, Dad, this is happening with Sally. What do we do?
Yeah.
and I will always, pitch in and figure out a way to do it, but they trust me enough. So I'm not, by having a great relationship with my kids, you having one with yours and whoever else having with theirs, you're not just protecting your kids, you're protecting all of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And this is definitely a village. There's no question this is a village.
Yeah.
So that's the first.
Yeah.
The second is understanding where the predator is. It is complete. I am far more comfortable letting my child run out in the woods by themselves than go to their bedroom
with
the door closed with this in their hand.
Yeah.
This is where the predator is.
Wow. He's not in the white van in the Target parking lot?
Not in the white van in the Target parking lot. There, all of those stupid things people post online about if they see this on your car, if you got that on your car, if somebody put a tie string or whatever. No, none of it. Zero. Your child being abducted by a stranger is less likely than your child being killed by a spider bite. That's the statistics on. But your child meeting a predator online
and being lured
to happen in your circle.
Wow.
It's going to happen in your circle.
Wow.
Now, your child may immediately just go delete and didn't even, the friend request didn't even take it.
Yeah.
So you didn't know, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But that's happening in your circle. And we protect our kids. I'm out there every day with my kids playing. Right? I go out in the street with them. We ride bikes together. I make sure nobody's going to get hit by a car. All those wonderful things.
Yeah.
It's still this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's back to that technology. Yeah. I am old enough. I am of the generation where my parents said, just be home before it gets dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I was home before it got dark, but not a moment sooner. And I never,
consequences.
but I never felt unsafe or threatened. And it's, it's such an insidious thing though, because you think, well, they're right in our own home, but what you're saying is the threat has invaded our homes.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you don't get your kids devices. These things are still super important in our lives.
Yeah.
They're educational, they're entertainment. There's a ton of value. Their connectivity to the world. Sometimes where you don't feel like you fit in your friend groups here, you can connect to other people, and that's all valuable.
Yeah.
But where's the lesson? And I'll give you the analogy for this one. Think about our cars. When you started driving, how did it all begin? You got a book. You read through the book and you got your test for permit. You got your permit. You won. You got it. Great. When you got your permit, you had to drive with a responsible adult.
Yeah.
And there were hours and places you could drive and couldn't drive. And then maybe you went to driver's ed at school, a little bit further. Now you pass a road test. You have a junior license, right? There's still restrictions. And eventually we let you have a full license and you can go out to the road. That's how this should start. We should treat this no differently.
Yeah.
We have to have that test, our education of our kid. We have to talk to them about it. We have to talk to them about stranger danger online.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is much more real
100%
than the white van.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely more real.
Yeah. My kids are all grown. They're well into adulthood. They're all in their 30s. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old, grandchildren. And it's chilling to think of like, how do you navigate that as a parent, with young kids? And, that's just so difficult. If there was one thing you could say to parents with young kids with respect to what we're talking about here, like, what's your best advice for them?
Well, I still go back to have dinner.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to keep going to that, my friend.
Yeah.
And it starts at you don't start having dinner with your kid at 14.
Oh, that's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's day one. And establish what dinner would be. And so that also means for you, mom and dad, this gets put away.
Yeah.
They see it. That matters more than what you're verbalizing. So From day one, I would do that.
Yeah.
When it's time to give them their phone, you got to talk to them. Would you talk to you if you were allowing your kid for the first time to walk from your house to the park, and the park is, say, 6 blocks away? What advice are you giving your kid? And right, you got something. You're gonna tell
big long list.
Yeah. Right? You're gonna tell them about, careful how to cross the street, make sure they're looking. You're gonna talk to them about if somebody approaches you, somebody else talks to you, and you want to know the list of friends they're with.
Yeah.
Especially the first time they're going out. You're not letting them by themselves. Your son or daughter is going to go with 2 or 3 other kids. They're going to go together to the park, right? And so you don't separate. You don't talk to anybody. If something's going on, make sure you all leave together. Call home. Call 911. We give them a whole bit of training.
Yeah.
Every time they progress and do something new.
Got to do the same with that. Yeah.
We don't do it here.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
We don't tell them the first time we're putting them out into the park by themselves.
Yeah.
Who do they allow to talk to? What are the dangers? Why should you come back and tell mom or dad?
Yeah.
And when they're young, they're probably going to come tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Your 10-year-old.
Not when they're 14, though.
No. But if you've done it from whatever age you give your kid that first tablet, because that's usually where it starts. We give them a tablet. I watch kids. Their faces are buried in these things. Kids love YouTube. It's a great time. It's super entertaining. I get it.
Yeah.
That's when the education starts.
Right.
Talk to your kid afterwards. They spent 2 hours on their tablet. Sit down and talk to them.
Yeah.
What'd you learn? What'd you see? Oh, can you show me a couple of those videos? Let me engage.
Yeah.
And then you talk to them a little bit about, is anybody a friend there? Anybody else you talk to? Friends aren't friends online unless you personally know them. Right? You have your 5 or 6 friends and you get their phone numbers and their IDs, and now you're talking to them online. Those are friends.
Right. Right.
Those other guys aren't. They're strangers.
Yeah.
But we have to educate them on that. It's that person on the other end can be another 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Or somebody my age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to interact with them about that.
Yeah.
Talk to you. No kid that age, 8, 9, 10, 11, they're going to tell you everything.
Yeah.
They're super honest at that point in life. So you build it there.
I hear you giving this advice as a parent, and it's well earned. But I also, you're also a cop giving this advice, and what strikes me about it is what you're saying to non-law enforcement is there is really important work for us to be doing as adults, as parents, as teachers. I love it. You've said it a couple times. It takes a village. We're all in this, and we all have a role to play. And I'm really that's really, it's challenging because we know the threat and how, especially you with the work you've done, how bad it could be. But it's also really encouraging because there's something for us to do. There's really important work for us to do.
And don't think the answer is, well, I'm not going to give my young kid a device. And if the first time you give your kid a device, they turn 16, you've lost the training process.
That's really
You've lost it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about we see it with kids, even just with alcohol. The first time they touch a sip of alcohol is away at college.
Yeah.
And they binge drink like animals until they hurt themselves because they just never learned responsibility with it. It's hard to teach at 16.
Yeah.
I give my child this phone the first time at 16, and I'm going to talk to them about responsibility with it. Odds are also at 16, they probably have a device I don't know about.
Yeah, that could be.
They have accounts. Every kid will have an account mom and dad do not know about.
Yeah. Is that common, even in the kids that
almost all of them.
Yeah.
And I'll say almost all, only because then the other ones we didn't find. But it is super common. Every kid has the confirmation photo account, the middle school graduation
Right.
photo, and then they have the real account.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the account mom and dad. I don't care how smart. I know my kids have accounts I don't know about.
Yeah.
Right. Because I have older ones. I know they do. I'm not kidding myself.
Yeah.
As good as I think I am with this stuff, where
are there who are the best, where are the best online safety like resources for parents that you guys recommend?
It's one of them is a volunteer of ours. Jessica Smith has a thing called Click Safe Intelligence.
Okay.
And it's a super easy, fun, TikTok style videos of training of some are good for mom and dad and some are good for the kid.
Okay.
There's a really good resource. There's a lot of good resources, but that's an easy hit.
Yeah. Okay.
That's of great. Getting your, kind of like some training and thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, I have two more things for you, two more questions. We talk about this I talk about this with my staff, talk about it with our volunteers, it's the idea of generativity. It's a genesis. It's, life-giving is where the word comes from. So the conversation we often have is, what are you doing that's life-giving for you? And so I want to pose that question to you in light of what you do. And this is dark work because I know not all the kids come home, and you're privy to that. So I can't imagine a worse scenario. In light of that, like what do you do that's life-giving and sustaining just to keep you in this fight?
I hike.
Do you? Oh.
I hike. Okay. I have found it's the best therapy. I can have days where I'm struggling, right? I know I'm struggling for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I'll hit a point where I'm like, I don't want to get off the couch. I grab my backpack, bottle of water, fill up my water thing, and I'm out the door.
Yeah.
10 minutes into a hike, the world changes.
Yeah.
You need to exercise. You need to see the good of things. You need to, nature. You can't beat nature. You really. So that's mine. I hike often. I will hike all through the winter. I'll hike in the snow. It's not going to stop me. I enjoy the seasons.
Yeah. What's the toughest hike you've ever done?
I don't know if there's a toughest hike. Like I've not done something worthy of that.
Yeah.
Where I live in New York, we have wonderful mountains and within 2 hours of me, there's just some spectacular, and within 20 minutes, I have trails. So I don't have to go far. I do have a list of where I want to go hiking. I've been out the only place I've been out besides here is Sedona. Sedona was beautiful.
That doesn't suck.
No, Sedona does not suck. I have a lot of intent for 2024 to hit at least one of the big parks in the country.
Yay.
Spend a week in one of the national parks and hike it. I'd like it to be 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of that's how I
that's great.
I find and ground myself.
Yep. That's so good. I wanted it to be the case for me that hiking is a thing, but I went and I hiked Mount St. Helens last spring. That was the single most awful hiking experience I've ever had. I made it to the top, and you literally climb up and climb down. But it was brutal. So I need to recalibrate my.
Yeah, it's gone a little lower, my friend.
Yeah. So, but I get that just outside physical movement being, I love the idea of grounded. So that's awesome. Keep it up then. Just keep hiking. What, is there anything on the horizon for the National Child Protection Task Force, just the work that you guys are doing? Anything on the horizon that you want to just give a shout out to, like, what's coming for you guys that you're really excited about, that's a real challenge for you?
Well, we're excited about everything. We're excited about just doing the work in the next case that comes in. Coming up in the future, not so distant future, we're having a training/conference event in Jacksonville, Florida in March.
Okay.
We'll be doing that later this year. We're going to have one in New York. We're just in the planning stages of that. So we're working on a couple of events for the year.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I really appreciate the work you do, but more so just the kind of the way in which you do it. I feel like I'm pretty attuned to humility. I wonder if it's because we just don't see that much of it these days. But you guys got it, and I really respect that and grateful for.
Thank you
for the work you do. So keep it up. So you see a lot, Kevin. You see a lot of trends that are coming down the pike that we need to be aware of, and you have a unique vantage point. What do you see that for you is most troubling?
So it is going to be sextortion. So sextortion is the up and coming thing. It has been growing exponentially, and I will tell you, 2024 scares the hell out of me on where it's going to be. There is not going to be a middle school or a high school this will not affect in our country, period. Sextortion is pretty girl, and it's mostly done to our boys, which is a different thing we're talking about in this world.
Yeah.
It's far more with the boys, but it's a pretty girl, creates an account. She befriends lots of boys, and one of the boys says, yeah, I'll talk to you. And they talk, and the conversation gets very dirty quickly. And maybe it goes to video, maybe it goes to images being sent back and forth. Once he makes the mistake and sends one image, the trap is set. Because now he has sent an image, or he's been on a chat and a video. She has it. Because they're engaged on his Instagram account, she has his entire friends list. So the next statement comes out of her is, you're going to send me $500 or I'm sending this to all of your friends.
Oh.
And, think about being 15 years old.
Yeah.
And the corner you're now put in. Right. So these boys they'll pay. They'll do things and they'll send it. But unfortunately, what we're seeing an excessive amount is suicides.
Because of that. Yeah, you're right.
Because of that. There are some horror stories of where the kid has dinner with mom and dad, goes to bed, has that friend request in his inbox, hits click, yes. They engage, talk, naughty things happen. She sends him the thing out, give me money. Sends it again, you could better give me money. Before dawn, he blew his head away. As a mom and dad, you didn't have a chance. You didn't even see your son depressed in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? Zero chance.
Wow.
This is being exploited by the same groups that have been doing online thievery and scams for years.
Yeah.
Nigerian prince scams and all these other things where people send you messages. I got money. If you send me this, I'll give you tons more.
Right.
And we'll help you, or a love scam. The organized crime that does that overseas has learned that sextortion pays and pays quickly. So the amount of people doing it has gone through the roof and is continuing to grow because there's money. Where 3 years ago, if we had this conversation, sextortion was about sex.
Yeah.
It was about me forcing that girl to give more images and do more nasty things and hurt her, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Today it's money.
Yeah.
And today it will affect every single community.
What's our best defense in life?
Knowledge.
Okay.
Knowledge is the best defense.
Yeah.
So what happens? What do you do if your 15-year-old walks down to you in your kitchen table and says, Dad, look at this. What we have found overwhelmingly, the majority of the time, what works the best? Delete and block. It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
they don't care about sending your images. They don't. It's not about.
They just need one.
They just need you to send the money.
Yeah.
Now, if you feel more comfortable sending them $200 to appease them and then delete and block, I'm not going to hold that against anybody. Like, I'm not telling you don't. The goal is to not have this sent to our friends and family.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to happen. If we can educate our kids beforehand and tell and this is really our sons more than our daughters.
Yeah.
Boys, when we see a pretty girl, I don't care if we're 15 or 52, we get stupid.
Yeah.
Our IQ drops dramatically.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier, the responsibility on the parents to prepare and train themselves and their kids before they step into this, into the, what you call it, the digital woods.
Yeah.
The dangerous digital woods. So, yeah, that's sobering. But it's reality. So
it is absolute reality.
Yeah.
And if you start talking to police departments, you'll ask them how many cases you're getting for sextortion. And they're all scratching their head going, we didn't have any last year. This year we got 7.
Yeah.
These are small departments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like these towns.
Yeah. Well, my wife's a high school teacher and my daughter's a high school counselor. I mean, they see this stuff all the time. All the time. Yeah. Yeah. It is real. Well, as is our custom, I want you to have the last word. And I just wondered if there's a charge, a challenge, a question you'd want to pose. But I want you to have the last word.
A charge or a challenge or a question? Huh? Now you really threw one at me. This got reversed, and I'm not ready for the reverse. I don't have a challenge for you. It's a challenge for everybody. Be part of the change. You don't have to be the one kicking in the door. The kick in the door person is such a small part of this. The change is everything. The change is we're going to early education of our kids, our schools. So that means you can join the PTA and have the PTA do educational things. You don't have to wait for the school, right? So we can do beforehand. Yeah, we need to have our police doing some things, but then who's part of that recovery process?
Yeah.
There is a lot to be done, and you don't have to climb Mount St. Helen. You can climb the smaller hills to start.
Yeah.
And get yourself to where you've just done your part. It's a village.
Yep. That's
right?
Great.
It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a team of villages to rescue a child. And that's our job.
That's great. Kevin Branzetti, National Child Protection Task Force. Thank you. This is great. I appreciate you being here.
You're welcome, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Masculine Wilderness Podcast with your host, Tom Perez. This podcast is a production of Epic Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to disrupting the demand for commercial sexual exploitation and dismantling the forces that perpetuate it. I'm your producer, Lauren Trantham. Special shout out to our favorite logo designer, Michelle Boucher, as well as Wes Finley, who crafted and donated our amazing theme song. Interested in sponsoring an episode? Send us an email at podcast@epicproject.org. That's podcast@epikproject.org. As a nonprofit organization, your donations allow us not only to produce this podcast and change the conversation around sexual exploitation, but also to manage our many programs, such as buyer intervention, teen prevention, and community education. Your support also allows us to support survivors of exploitation and more. To learn more about our work and to donate, visit www.epicproject.org. Once again, that is www.epikproject.org. Most importantly, this podcast would be nothing without you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in, subscribing, and sharing this episode with your friends and loved ones. Thank you for your commitment to learning more about the issues that affect our most vulnerable populations. Thank you for navigating this masculine wilderness with us. See you next episode.